computer. All right, so last week we introduced Gimel, Dalet, and Hey, but we introduced Gimel and Dalet only by their plosive sound, and that is with that Dagesh dot right in the middle there, which has that popping plosive sound. Today we're going to talk about the same two letters, but without their Dagesh. If you are talking to a modern Israeli or somebody that does the Sephardic pronunciation, but the more modern context of it, they do not distinguish between these two sounds, between the plosive and the non-plosive Gimel and Dalet. So there's some people that could care less if you learn the difference between the two. But I feel very strongly for myself anyway, that I would like to learn it correctly right off the bat, rather than adopt the more lazy style of the Hebrew. So if you're finding that it's very hard and you can't hear this, don't worry. This is going to just be kind of a crash course on the difficult pronunciation here. So we've looked at how these are written. Gimel looks like a guy playing golf, but sometimes the Dagesh is there and sometimes it's not. And the Dalet, which looks like a door, sometimes it has a doorknob, sometimes it doesn't. And that all depends on the pronunciation style here. So a couple things that came up from the homework this last week that people sent me lots of questions on was about what's the difference between like Masoretes and Sephardic pronunciation, etc. Kind of getting these terms a little bit confused. So Sephardi means of Spain. So after the diaspora, after all of these Jews are going all over the place, there's different groups in different countries and different locales. And the Sephardic Jews are the ones living in Spain, and they are the ones that the Masoretes come out of. So there's lots of different groups amongst the Sephardis that are wanting to homogenize the language amongst all of their brethren, not just their own country of Spain, but amongst everyone. And so these groups of the Masoretes are located there in Spain, Sephardi, or and they're trying to homogenize the language. So if I ever putting that on a quiz or something and it's a little bit confusing, know that Sephardic and Masoretic are very much kind of synonyms. One is a subgroup of the other. All right, so the pronunciation of these two consonants without their plosive sounds. It's basically like you're trying to pronounce them with their plosive sounds, except for you're trying to squelch it in the back of your throat. It's more in the guttural range back here. So Gimel, if we're doing it with the hard plosive g sound, you can put your hand in front of your mouth and practice that if you'd like. The g, you're trying to feel that pop of air. But if you're not, it's without the Dagesh, then you're trying to squelch it a little bit in the back of your throat. You're kind of trying to gargle a little bit. That g sound. So instead of it floating out, you're using a fricative in the back. So r, r. So I'm going to kind of do both sets here, and hopefully it's not just super embarrassing. Sometimes when I'm doing these weird sounds on camera, it kind of freaks me out. So g, g, r, r. That Gimel pops, and the r, Gimel is in the back of the throat. Now with Dalet, it is a little bit interesting. So notice where the tip of your tongue is when you're speaking Dalet. The plosive Dalet sound is right on that bridge, right behind your teeth, right? The tip of your tongue, d, d. But if we take the tip of the tongue and put it in between the teeth, like this, like you're trying to pronounce the, T-H-E, the. That's where Dalet is, or Thalet is. So we're actually moving the tip of the tongue down in between the teeth. It's an interdental letter. And it's basically a DH sound, which we don't have in English, but that you're trying to vibrate it. So it's a little bit different than THE, the, in English. That one is going to be a letter that we learn a little bit later on. This one is a voiced letter in between the teeth versus if we were not to do a voice, if you try to not use your vocal cords or not vibrate in the back of your throat, that's going to be the thav. Thav, you're just releasing air, but here with the vowlet, you're actually vibrating. And so hopefully that makes sense. We'll get some practice with it here in just a bit. They're written the same except for that dagesh dot in the middle. So let's introduce one more vowel, but it's going to be a simple one because it's the same sound that we learned last week. This one is called a hirik malay. Hirik malay is that same hirik single dot underneath of a consonant, but it's also followed by the consonant yod. And so hirik yod is often what it's kind of, it's slang term. People call it a hirik yod all the time. The technical term is hirik malay, and it is going to be pronounced almost identical to just a single hirik. The difference is that hirik malay has a little bit of a y sound at the end of it. So hirik by itself is pronounced e, e. Hirik malay is pronounced e, e. You try to put just a little bit of that y sound at the end of it. And so later on, I think it's lesson 5 or so when I've planned it, that we dive into the historicity of all of these vowel sounds and where they come from. But for now, we're just going to kind of keep it simple and take a look at these two in their kind of, if we look at like a musical quality, hirik is a shorter version and hirik malay is a longer version because it has a little bit extra of a sound to it. So again, hirik, e, hirik malay, iya, iya. You can draw it out as you're practicing, but when we're speaking quickly and things, it has just an ever so slight yeah sound to it. But I'm kind of exaggerating it here so that we can kind of practice that yeah sound. And so an easy way to think of it is, at least for me, in English, and it might be different for Jeanette there, where we look at E as in bee, as in that little insect that buzzes around, E. But the hirik malay is pronounced iya, as in our English, ki. Like when you pronounce ki, you kind of add just a little bit of a ya at the end of it. Typically, I mean, it kind of depends where you're from, but and how fast or slow you might be talking. But B and ki are helpful to me to memorize the sound that comes with those. Let's see, and we've talked about the diacritics. So let's do just a quick refresh on dagesh before we start practicing. So there are, well, let me do a quick review on diacritics. So we have little symbols all around our consonants in a Masoretic style. They're training wheels to help us learn how these things are pronounced before we take away those diacritics. So there's cantillations above, which we won't focus on. There's geresh and dagesh, which we're talking about today. And then the nikud, or the vowel sounds that hang out below the consonants. So that dagesh divides into two different categories. There's dagesh kal and dagesh hazak. Dagesh hazak is kind of the default, where if it has a dagesh, if it has that middle dot, it's going to double the consonant. that my go-to example is pizza, right? We have a double Z when we could easily just make it as one Z. But in Hebrew, they never have two of the same consonant consecutively. They shorten it down and put a dot in there to show that it's a doubled sound, a doubled consonant. And so Dagesh Chazak is kind of the default. If it has that middle dot, you just assume that it's doubled until you've got the Dagesh Kal acronym memorized. And so the Dagesh Kal, there's 6 different letters that the Dagesh actually changed the sound of how the consonant is pronounced. And so that's what we're doing with our Gimel and Dalet today. We've already learned Bet and Vet last week, and last week and this week we're doing Gimel and Dalet, and their different sounds, their different nuances when they have that Dagesh dot in there. So again, Beged Kefet is an acronym that helps us remember the 6 letters that are classified as Dagesh Kal, where it doesn't just double the consonant, it actually changes the sound of the consonant. Beged Kefet. So let us get some practice. As we divide, this is how I'm trying to divide the entire course, is into the 4 different parts, where we hear, we speak, we read, and we write. And so eventually, and in our last part of it, we're going to be writing it down. So you're going to want to get some paper and a pencil out. If you have your calligraphy pen, that would be great. We won't get to it just right this second, but if you want to get that handy. So I'm going to have everyone, if you're practicing along, which I hope you will, if you could mute yourself during this speak portion. And so I'm going to be speaking the word, and then you're going to be trying to repeat what you're hearing. I think that that's a crucial point or process of the language acquisition, is being able to listen and repeat, kind of a thing. So this first set is just a list of vocab words, which these are going to be on the website as flashcards that you can make manually, or digital ones that are going to be on there. I haven't introduced them to you yet. So this is going to be our first time through. I'm going to put the definition in English on the screen, but then I'm going to speak the actual Hebrew. So without being able to see the letters, if you can hear them and try to repeat or mimic them based on the different sounds that we've learned so far. So to love is ahav. Ahav. We'll kind of go somewhat slow on these, and I'll try to pronounce it quite a few times so that you can get some practice with it. Ahav. Ahav. Notice that sound is not congested in the back of the throat. It's not squelched. It's not ahav. It's ahav. So if you want to, as kind of an extra practice, you could try writing those down, how you think what kind of letters and vowels that they might be. But for now, you can just speak them if you'd like. Ahav. To perish or to be lost. Avad. 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 Avad means to perish or to be lost. To be willing, to wait, or to long for. It's all kind of combined there in one word. It is ava, 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 v, v. To treat or deal faithlessly or treacherously. That's a common Hebrew word, but we really don't use it a lot in English at all. But to treat or to deal faithlessly or treacherously is bagad. Bagad. Now that is a mouthful. This is using 2 non-plosives there at the end. And so it's going to sound really hard. It's going to be hard to pronounce. So have patience with yourself as you're getting that, as you're trying to hear it, and then try to repeat. Bagad, bagad, bagad. It's probably one of the trickier ones this week. To be high, lofty, or exalted. Gavah, gavah, gavah means to be high, lofty, or exalted. To moan, mutter, or ponder. Now this one's an interesting one because the word sounds kind of like a moan itself. So it's another kind of hard one to pronounce. To moan, mutter, or ponder is chagah, 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 chagah. That one, it just kind of, it's interesting because that's not a sound or letters that we use in English. Chagah, chagah. As we kind of touched on last week, there's two different versions of father. Father in the generic sense is av, av. That's when you're talking about somebody else's father or a generic father figure. But if you're referring to your own father, and only you can refer to your own father, somebody else can't use this word to refer to yours. You can only speak about it yourself, and that is Abba, Abba. So again, the generic is Av, v, and the specific is Ab, Abba. So one is fricative and one is plosive. All right, so roof. Roof is gag, gag. So we have a plosive sound that morphs into a fricative sound. Gag, gag. That's another really tricky one. That means roof. Gag. This one is also very funny because it's just opposite of English, and so it might be a little bit hard to memorize, but we'll get there. But the term for she, that pronoun, is he. She is he. He. If any of you have watched a couple of the Aleph with Beth videos, you'll know that these pronouns are quite tricky because they're all just direct opposite of what English is. All right, the preposition for in, on, with, as, or at. Now there's different conditions where these are going to come into play. So don't get too hung up on these specific prepositions, and this is the only way that you can refer to that type of preposition. But most often it's in, and that is but. It's the ever so short b plosive, but. So if you're saying something like in the house, you would say bite. So bite means house, and bite, so you're in the house, bite.
Cameron?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, is it attached to the word when you use it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when we get into actually forming some of these words together, we'll start learning when they're attached and when they're not. But most prepositions, conjunctions like and articles like the are connected to the word, and they precede the word. Even if they refer to something after, they're connected right there before. And I'll show a couple examples here in just a second, but
you write it with a comma behind it?
What was that?
Do you write it, there's a high comma behind it?
No, but you put a shava underneath of it, which we haven't learned quite yet, but you put a shava underneath of it, and that helps identify it as the preposition that it is. Yeah. All right, and so the article that we would know so far, and this again would be right at the beginning of a word attached to it, and that is ha. 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 So if we're saying the house, we would say habait. Habait. So technically, if we were saying in the house, we would say bahabait. Bahabait. So in the ha. And again, we don't really need to memorize these fully until we go through our flashcards this week and everything. There's not going to be a quiz on this today, but this one's interesting. So we know that there's no punctuation in Hebrew, right? But oftentimes we can identify when we're starting to ask a question by also placing a ha in front of it. Ha. But the article, which is the ha, is a little bit longer versus the interrogative marker, the kind of pseudo question mark, is a very short ha. So ha, ha. So if we're saying, is it in the house? That I created a really hard word for myself. But habaha bite. Habaha bite. All right, the word for alone, bath, bath. So we start with a plosive and go to a fricative. Bath, bath. That means alone. So is it good for man to be alone? No, it is bath, bath. I don't know. That's how I memorized it anyway. I don't know if those are helpful. I should probably omit all of my little weird things that I associate to try to memorize some of these words.
No, they're super helpful. Our brains attached to those funny things, so
yeah,
it's good.
All right, the word for coastland, which I have yet to see this one. I mean, it's not like a super common word, but it is with our frequent flashcards. So coastland is just our simple vowel that we learned today, e, with that little bit of a ya at the end. Coastland means e, e. I guess not means, but is pronounced e. Okay, so we're going to talk about two different kinds of fish. Oh, sorry. So a singular fish, or like a plural, like a group or fish in general kind of a thing. So a singular fish is dag, dag. So interestingly enough, I always picture a dog with a fish in its mouth when I'm thinking of the fish. Dag, dag. But if we're talking about fish, my tongue tied, fish in plural or in a general sense, like all the fish in the sea, we're going to say daga, daga, dag, daga. So with all of these sounds and words that I'm speaking here today are all consonants and vowels that we've learned so far. I'm never going to, well, except for bite, because we haven't done that one. I shouldn't have thrown that word in there. But all of these other ones are things that we should already have some sort of foundation for to practice these. So I'm going to have practice examples there on the website where you can go through this again, where I'll record myself speaking those and you can go and repeat them at your leisure. So let's go into the reading or transliteration. So these are all, yeah, go for it.
And sometimes I have a hard time hearing what is said on those things that you are talking on,
Mhm.
you know, to the pronunciation, that, you know, if I don't know the word, what it is, sometimes I cannot make it out.
Mhm.
I'm partially hearing impaired. I only have 70% on one side, and I have closed caption, but it doesn't always say what you're saying. So
Mhm.
I have sometimes a hard time following what you're saying.
Yes, and so that's going to be one of the difficult parts of our speak section, where
Yeah,
it's
it's
more of
not
a listen and repeat. And so, yeah, you might not get as much out of those ones. And so these other ones, like the read and the write, are going to be a lot more helpful for you. That's why we're having kind of 4 different sections, so that there's something for everyone, and you can understand them a lot better.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the read section that we're going to do next, these are all English words, but we're transliterating them and using Hebrew consonants and vowels. So if you want to pull up a notepad on your computer, or write it down on a piece of paper, I'm going to pronounce all of these and see if you can come up with the actual English word that they would be equivalent to. So again, these aren't actual Hebrew words. These are English words, just written with Hebrew characters. And then after this exercise, we'll do just the opposite, where we'll have, anyway, we'll come up with the Hebrew letters. So this one, try to pronounce it yourself, and then I'll step in and pronounce it, and if we're having troubles with it. So this one is bead, bead. So we have 2 plosive sounds there. B, E, D, bead. And what word is this? And again, all of these are in English. This one's fairly simple. This one is B, bzz. So another thing to note with these is that not every single letter, it's not going to be a letter for letter transliteration. This is going to be a sound transliteration. So for this, it's going to be body, body. So it's definitely not going to be spelled like that if we're doing a letter for letter transliteration, but we're going for sounds here. So body, we have 2 plosives there. Right, so this one be pronounced bag, bag. Again, 2 plosives. And this one is going to be the name of a man. I guess it could be a female as well, but Bob, Bob. This one is going to be gob. It's not a super common English word, but if you have a gob of something, gobs of something.
Cameron, can you go back to the one, I think it's 2 back, it was bag?
Yeah.
How is that bag? Because isn't that an
Oh,
odd sound?
sorry. Yes, bog. Bog is, thank you for correcting me, because
Thank you, Charlie.
Because I was very confused by that.
yeah, not bag. Sometimes my brain misfires. I'm so sorry. I'm not the best teacher. Bog. Bog would be the correct
Okay.
pronunciation of that. Sorry. All right. Gob is where we left off, I think. Gog, as in the battle of Gog and Magog. This one's the name of deity. We've got God, two plosives. This one is Daub. Daub. So I think that there's a couple different ways you can write that in English, right? D-A-U-B or D-O-B, Daub. This one's a best friend. We've got a dog. Dog. Now, another thing to note here is that sometimes that's a little bit tricky with transliteration and vowels and things, that you could have a patach under that dalet, or you could have a kamatz, because they're kind of both the same ah sound, right? One's a little bit longer. And so they're just kind of interchangeable until we learn about syllables next week. So if you're kind of like scratching your head going, why are we using one versus the other right now? For these first couple lessons, they're kind of interchangeable. Next week, when we learn about syllables and syllable structure, we'll learn when you would use a kamatz over a patach. So this one is Dodd. Dodd. So this one is the name of a character in a famous book. Dobby. Dobby. Now I've heard people pronounce that in different ways too. So, I mean, this is just an exercise. It's not going to be 100% accurate, right? But Dobby. This is a spin on our previous one, man's best friend, but a little tiny one. Doggy. Doggy. This one is deed. Deed. So this one might be tricky. Since we start off with a silent consonant, we're going to begin with a vowel sound, right? So this one is odd. Odd. This is the name of a famous biblical woman. Eve. Eve. So if we were doing like a letter for letter transliteration, we would put another hirik at the end, right? E-V-E, but we're just going for sounds. And so this is Eve. It stops at that V. All right, so switching gears. Now we're going to go in reverse. And I can't remember if I put these in the exact same order or not. I meant to mix them up, but if they're in the same order, just pretend like you didn't know that. So go ahead on your piece of paper, if you have a ballpoint pen or if you have a calligraphy pen, but try to write these out. Again, not a letter for letter transliteration, but a sound transliteration. How would you write bead? So we've done all of these, but I can't remember their order. I don't think I put like their answer. So let me So ready for the answer? Bead. Bead. All right, bog. How would we do bog? And this is that one that I messed up on earlier, so shoot. It's not bag, it is bog. All right, let's do daub. Daub. We can write it like this. So with all of these practice ones, since we don't have English words that use the fricatives, r and the, we're getting off easy a little bit. But as we move on, we will have some good practice with those a little bit down the road. All right, Eve. How would we write or transliterate Eve? All right, so we're going to start off with a silent consonant. Anytime that we have a word that begins with a vowel sound, we're going to have that silent consonant, which is either going to be aleph or ayin. And then Eve, terminate with that fricative v sound. All right, let's do doggy. So this one has a lot of English letters, but we're going to condense it down, transliterate it by its sounds for doggy. Doggy. Right. The answer for that one, again, you could put a kamatz just as easily underneath that first dalet. Doggy. Okay, let's do Bob. Bob, going to have two different B's with either a patach or a kamatz underneath that first one. Bob. All right, let's do one more. Let's do Dobby. Dobby. Dobby, we'll write with a dalet and a bet. We're going to put either a kamatz or a patach underneath the dalet and a hirik, or you could do a hirik yod under the bet. Dobby. You could actually, is probably more correct with the sounds to put a hirik malay. All right, so with that exercise, let's do some beged kefets really quick. So let's take a look at these, and what I want to try to do is practice having them roll off the tongue. So let's talk about the actual consonant names. So from right to left, we've got bet, gimel, dalet, kaf, fe, tav. Bet, gimel, dalet, kaf, fe, tav. Bet, gimel, dalet, kaf, fe, tav. So, I mean, we haven't learned those last three, but we're going to throw them in so that we're memorizing this beged kefet acronym pretty handily. So let me put it off there. So try remembering it and see if you can repeat it out loud. And it might take a little bit. You might have to write down the beged kefet. So what are the first three? We've got Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav. The sooner that you memorize it, the easier it's going to be for you as you're sight reading actual words. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav.
Can you do that those last three? For some reason, I'm not there.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got Kaf, Fe. So Fe is the only one of the 6 that in this acronym, it doesn't have the plosive version. This has the fricative version without that dagesh dot. Kaf, Fe, Tav. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav. So that would be something that would be very handy for you all week long, to just try to set it like a reminder on your phone or something, to be like, oh yeah, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav, just to try to repeat it back. If you would like to go an extra step, this is a little bit harder because sometimes, especially where we haven't learned the Kaf, Fe, Tav yet, the sounds might be a little bit harder, but try going the same type of thing, but instead of saying the name of the letter, just do the sound of the letter. So we've got B, G, D, K, F, T. Bugada cuffada, bugada cuffada, bugada cuffada, bugada cuffada. Now that might be a little bit trickier, especially if we haven't learned those. But I find that if I can remind myself to just say that little bugada cuffada, bugada cuffada, bugada cuffada, a lot of times it finally starts sinking in, and then I've got them. Beged kefetz. I've always got that acronym down, and it really does help a lot. Having a few months of Hebrew behind me, knowing Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Fe, Tav, Bagada Kafada is very handy. So that's something that I would really drill and really try to practice a lot. Then next, I don't have a slide for this one, but let's just a second. Let me find one of my old slides really quick. I just barely opened the chat. Tracy's cracking herself up. Yep. Bagada kapara, bagada kapara. I'm trying to pull up the alphabet because let's actually start learning the alphabet song. Even if we don't have all of the sounds yet, at least getting the tune for the ones that we do have. Just a second. I thought I did have it like just right on the tip here. Got to go back through all my other ones. Okay. And then as soon as I start sharing, it goes off again. Just a second. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm usually pretty with it, but sometimes technology. There we go. Is that gonna play? Yeah. Okay, so the Aleph Bet song. I hate singing in front of people, so it is what it is, but my voice cracks all the time and sometimes I don't hit the right notes, but here it is. So the alphabet song, let me do it just like one time through so that you can kind of hear the tune and what it is. And we're actually going to do the echo version of it, where I'll do some, you repeat it kind of thing. Aleph bet vet gimel dalet he vav zayin chet tet yod haf kaf lamed mem nun sameh ayin be ve tzari kuf resh sin tav. So you'll notice with this alphabet, this is one that I didn't make it up or anything. This is a common alphabet song, but you'll notice that they only use 3 of the Beged Kefetz. They only distinguish between bet and vet, kaf, haf and kaf, and pei and fei. And so this one would be technically considered more of a modern Sephardic versus the ancient Sephardic. So for this one, we're just going to kind of go along with the original, because if you try to mess it up, then if you try to put those other 3 Beged Kefets in there, it throws the tune off. But you'd still be able to get it with this one easy enough. So I'm going to do 3 consonants and then you sing it back. Like, and if you are singing it back, if you'll have yourself muted so that it doesn't create this weird lag and stuff with all of our different connections. So I'm just going to pray that you're singing along and I'm not just singing by myself. All right, so Aleph Bet Vet Gimel Dalet Hey Vav Zayin Chet Tet Yod Haf Kaf Lamed Mem Nun Samek Ayin Pei Fei Tzari Kuf Resh Shin Sin Tav. All right, so how are you doing? Sometimes, especially with those new letters that we haven't covered yet or anything like that, it might be a little bit tricky. But let's just do the first part of the alphabet with the echo just until the hey, because those are the ones that we've learned so far. So, Aleph Bet Vet Gimel Dalet Hey. And then repeat it. Aleph Bet Vet Gimel Dalet Hey. You can see my voice. It goes wonky on that last one. So again, I've got all of those versions of the song there on Learning Zion. If you would like to practice and learn the alphabet song in its totality, under resources up here at the top, so there's lesson 1, lesson 2. Above that is resources and the alphabet song. So let's take a look at some of those recordings to kind of explain the difference between them and try to look at them really quick. So the echo version is what we just did. Hi, in this version of the alphabet song, does the sound come through on that all right, or is it weird? Be going very slow and repeating the step. Okay, let me screen share my thing differently. Just a second. Share sound. Hi, in this version of the alphabet song, we will be going very slow and repeating the stanzas. So I'll say 3 to 4 consonants, and then you repeat back 3 to 4 consonants. Aleph Bet Vet Aleph Bet Vet Gimel Dalet Hey Gim. And so the snowball version is quite a bit different than that. Hi, in this version of the snowballs all the way through the alphabet. All right. Aleph Bet Aleph Bet Vet Aleph Bet Vet Gimel. And so it's just going to take 1 and snowball an additional 1 on each time that you restart. And so sometimes that might be helpful, especially where we haven't learned the rest of it, that you can kind of snowball your way and learn letter by letter. Now the sounds version is a little bit different. It's the harder because you're not saying the names of the words. Say the name of the consonant and then the sound it makes. And then the second time, I'm just going to go through and only. Aleph is silent. Bet, b. Vet, v. Gimel, g. Dalet, d. So with that one, again, since we are going to be distinguishing between the dagesh sounds of the Beged Kefets, that may throw you off if you're just going through that, because I'm doing the plosive sounds throughout this rather than distinguishing those from the fricatives. And then once you're getting really good at it, then you can go to the speeds version.
Het, tet, yod, haf, kaf.
So it starts off slow, and then by the end,
Vazayin, het, tet, yod, haf, kaf. Lamed, mem, nun, samek, ayin, pe.
then you can get really good at speeding it up. Not saying that you have to. I mean, because it's a fun tongue twister. But if you want to play it out on the piano kind of thing, or if you would like to learn the alphabet song to the tune of Hava Nagila, this one I put together with the actual distinguishing the Beged Kefet sounds. And so we have the full Hava Nagila song down here, and then you can sing along with it. Kind of sounds a little bit cool, but you know, again, my voice sucks, so here's a sample of it. So, I mean, that one might sound a little cooler, but it's kind of hard to sing, honestly. So whichever alphabet song you'd like, but if you could start memorizing the alphabet by song, a lot of times that music can really help us cement in the order of the letters and help us recall those things later on. So anyway, that's all on the website. I'm going to try to get new templates updated and everything, but those are very handy for me. I drill those on our way to the temple with Mother. We're always singing this crazy Hebrew alphabet all the time.
Flora
So-
was applauding you for singing. That like this.
Yep.
I,
Be in the car. We're lifting chairs up and everything. Yep. So any questions, any things that you would like clarification or practice on or anything? Again, just a reminder, so the homework for this week is not chapter 2, but it's to jump ahead and learn chapter 3. So I'm going to be posting all of the lesson 3 content on there this week. And so that will be the introduction to the new letters. We're going to be doing Vav, Zayin, and Het, as well as Tsere and Tsere Malay, the 2 vowels. And so it'll just be a short little video and all of my slides and everything on that. And then next week, we'll kind of do like we did this week, where we're going to drill and practice all of those new sounds and things. So it'll be a fairly short kind of homework week. It should just be 15-20 minutes worth to watch and get introduced to those things. And they're not on there yet, but I'll get them on there by the end of the day.
There wasn't a digital version of flashcards this time.
Oh, there goes.
Was
Okay.
there?
I'll check on that and get that on there. Sometimes as I copy over templates and stuff, I might lose something, but yeah, thanks for pointing that out. The digital flashcards. Let me actually write that down. Get that, put it on there. Yeah, again, thanks for bearing with me. Sometimes I'm a little bit scatterbrained as of late.
There's a lot to this, so
Yeah,
Right.
thanks for doing this with us.
thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah.
sticking this time.
Yeah. And hopefully
Yeah.
with all of our drilling and stuff, we can really get it down. I've had a lot of people email me this last week and they're like, oh man, our summer is just getting way too booked up. Hopefully you do this class again. So who knows? I have no idea what my schedule is from day to day. So at least I'm recording all of these so that if we never do come back to the very beginning principal steps again, you'll have those for reference and all of the worksheets and all that kind of stuff to do at your own pace in the future. But anyway, hopefully, if you have any questions
I'm
and stuff, in the
committed.
meantime,
I'm doing it. I'm not going to fail this time.
sweet. Yeah.
Thanks for
right.
helping us.
Well, we will see y'all later. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you.
Bye-bye.